It's hard to find a brand that's under fire more than Marvel right now. They're getting absolutely destroyed from all angles with no break in sight. A tell-all book that exposed to the general audience just how bad things are behind the scenes, a movie that's looking like one of their worst flops yet, and their next big Thanos-level villain is going to be in court for a while on charges that probably have Marvel itching to drop him.
Everything is falling apart.
Variety decided now would be a good time to pile on even more, with an article that touches on things like the disastrous Blade reboot and how Marvel was considering bringing back the original Avengers for their own movie. I can't even begin to imagine how big of a disaster that would be. Just thinking about these modern day writers getting their hands on the Avengers makes my skin crawl.
You guys make me sick.
So according to Variety, there have been talks about bringing back the original cast of Avengers for their own movie. They call it a dramatic move that's meant to be a response to the Marvel brand that crapped out TV shows and diluted focus and attention. The article specifically mentions Robert Downey Jr. and Scarlett Johansson, since their characters are dead, but of course Marvel can just use their dandy new multiverse tool to cheapen and invalidate those deaths. The studio hasn't committed to anything yet. After all, they've only lost hundreds of millions on multiple movies. What's the rush?
Take your time. Yeah, don't rush,
Now we all know the original Avengers actors got pretty expensive near the end, and I doubt that'll change moving forward. Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans are much bigger stars than they were a few years ago. Not to mention RDJ and Scarlett definitely know their worth by now, especially when it comes to Marvel. As far as Mark Ruffalo goes, honestly who even cares? Just make Hulk all CGI at this point and drop that idiot. He embarrassed himself enough on the dumpster fire that was She-Hulk. Right after this article came out, another leaker claimed RDJ had already agreed to return. Feels like a good time to point out, he was getting paid $25 million upfront for Iron Man 3 as Variety mentioned, and his endgame salary netted him $75 million. At a time where Marvel's costs are becoming an issue, the last thing they should be looking to do is add huge costs like that to their already bloated budgets.
Stop it. Get some help.
It's not going to matter if they manage to get the actors back if they hand them over to the same morons who've been fucking up the MCU over the last few years. What they need to be focusing on is bringing in some higher quality writers and directors that actually care about what they're doing. At the beginning of the MCU, there was passion. There were people who were devoted to bringing the best versions of these characters to the screen. Now it's all about spectacle. Every writer just wants to insert their own beliefs and values in between some poorly choreographed fights or shitty CGI battles. Who cares if the characters people want to see get sidelined or disrespected in favor of the characters the writers identify with? They certainly don't give a crap. Just look at the recent Spider-Man 2 game for proof about how modern day creatives view these stories. The game director openly admits that they knew fans hated the MJ missions and that she's overpowered in this game. But to quote him directly, "I don't give a shit, she's fine, I don't care." They go out of their way to avoid giving the paying customer what they want because they don't care about these characters or stories. They only care about forcing their own beliefs down your throat.
This is all about me. Me.
If we don't see some serious changes behind the scenes, it won't matter who they bring back. These movies won't perform the same because fans aren't gonna like seeing these iconic characters get treated like shit. I bet that they really think if they just throw these characters in, they'll automatically regain the endgame hype and have fans lining up in droves again. Yes, their movies will definitely perform a bit better as long as they just throw those characters in, but they won't be making billions of dollars again. Those days are in the rear view for the MCU, and it's nothing but massive potholes ahead. It's all just rumors for now, but again, it wouldn't surprise anyone to see them go back to their original moneymakers now that everything else is failing.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
The article also addresses the Jonathan Majors controversy, but the only piece of news is that Marvel has discussed replacing Kang with Doctor Doom. At this point, that just seems unlikely given how deeply Kang has been embedded into their story, but who knows? They haven't filmed the Avengers movies yet, so anything could happen. Hell, a few months ago they fired the writers, so at this point they could kill Kang with CGI, have another villain like Doom kill him off screen, or just have another actor be one of his variants, even though the end of Quantumania implied all his variants look the same. I don't give a singular fuck about Kang, since the MCU version has already died 3 times on screen so far. 2 of those times he was killed by low tier heroes, and 1 time he just got randomly shredded into time spaghetti. If you want to see the potential Kang has as a villain, I'd recommend watching the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes animated show. Now that's how you tell a damn story. I'm not even gonna get into how the Secret Invasion arc on that show makes the Disney Plus version look like day-old rotted dog shit.
That is one big pile of shit.
Then they get into the Blade reboot, which has become such an abomination even Dr. Frankenstein would tell Disney they've gone a bit overboard. This thing has been in production hell since Mahershala Ali was introduced at Comic-Con. For years we've been hearing about how it was some woke bullshit story about Blade and his daughter who would eventually replace him by the end. As this article puts it, the story was a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead.
Any diverse woman in it, make it gay! Put a chick in it and make her name it gay!
Another leaker even reported that in a rare instance, a Marvel executive got yelled at and eventually fired by Feige because they tried to hide just how shitty this movie was instead of sounding the alarm. Wow, what a fucking surprise. Marvel planned to toss aside a popular male character in favor of a female character and a liberal morality lesson. Who could have guessed that would happen? Well, other than the millions of fans who've been onto Marvel's grift for years now. I guess if you're a female journalist for a mainstream publication, you're not a basement-dwelling incel for daring to criticize Marvel.
How does that even make sense?
I said that as a joke, but there are actually people going after the author now, citing other articles she wrote that according to them weren't credible or were proven wrong. What they're choosing to ignore is that this information perfectly lines up with things we already knew about Marvel. If there were some things that came out of left field like a My Little Pony crossover, that would be different. But all this article did was give some specific examples and context about what we already knew. Marvel is fucked. The most surprising part of this article is that a mainstream media company actually published it. The article itself just took generalized stuff we've been hearing for years and regurgitated it through a major publication alongside some scathing quotes and specific details. Then there's the hypocritical leakers hopping onto the hype to confirm certain aspects of the story, then turning around and claiming it's all fake, even though they've been leaking this exact news for a while now. Just strange behavior that almost makes me feel like they're just jealous this article summed up what they've been reporting and got way more attention than their tweets or posts ever did.
They stole it from us.
One part of the story that did blow my mind touched on She-Hulk's post-production and budget. If you can believe it, each She-Hulk episode cost $25 million. Again, let me repeat that. $25 million an episode for this.
3, 2, 1. You know I'm the hottest. You ain't never gotta hit me if I'm
Oh, you are way more fun than my last lawyer. I will kill for you, Megan Thee Stallion.
For reference, each episode of the last season of Game of Thrones cost $15 million. And Marvel actually has the audacity to wonder why they're losing money. The parts of the article I enjoyed the most were the pictures from Variety artists that you've seen in the background in this video. They're fucking hilarious, and they perfectly sum up Marvel's current situation. The OG Avengers built up the MCU, with help from characters like Spider-Man, and this new wave of heroes helped tear it all down. All the former Marvel fans couldn't give two shits about this new roster of superheroes and villains, no matter how many Twitter stans yell at you that the MCU is still king of the hill. The Avengers watching in horror as the franchise they worked so hard to turn into a global brand gets relegated to bullshit TV shows nobody watches and movies that lose hundreds of millions of dollars.
The only power I have is that I believe we can do better.
Those pictures capture the situation Marvel finds themselves in better than any of the words in the article. If you've been paying attention, none of this should shock you. We get some more specific details about finances and rumors that we saw coming from a mile away, but it's what most of us have been saying for years. Marvel dug themselves into a hole with all their bullshit political grandstanding and virtue signaling, which led to terrible hiring practices and god-awful lazy writing. So they have nobody to blame but themselves when this imaginary modern audience they were trying to appeal to never showed up. None of us fans take joy in seeing the characters we love fail. What we take joy in is seeing the people who ruin those characters with a smile on their faces finally get exposed for being the incompetent pieces of shit we already knew they were.